In this episode of the Houndsman XP podcast, the Panther Tracker is back. We got Gavin Lipjes on the podcast, and we are talking about leopard hunting in South Africa. We're going to break down the different types of leopard hunting that they do over there, and we are going to wrap this thing all up in a nice, neat package, put a big bow on the top of it, and close it out with leopard hunting with hounds. Don't be tempted to sit back and say, wait, I don't hunt leopards. Not very many of us do. So don't fall for that. I'll tell you why you need to listen to this one all the way through, why you need to tune into this. The challenges we face every day on social media, in legislative halls, in fish and wildlife meetings is because we don't know how to talk about hunting and what we do. Hey folks, if you don't believe me, I want you to do this right now. I'm going to ask the question, and after I ask it, then you push pause and you say it out loud. Most of you are in your truck, so you're by yourself anyway. You pick your nose and do all kinds of other stuff while you're in there, and you don't care about that, so don't be embarrassed about doing this. When I ask the question, you push pause, and then you verbally, out loud, answer this question. Why do you hunt with hounds? All right, so you push pause, you're back. How did you do? Were you articulate? Would you feel comfortable talking to your legislator if he asked you that question? You walk up to him in the store, you go to a meeting, he point blank asks you, or she asks you, why do you hunt with hounds? Are you prepared to answer that question? Well, we are going to talk about that very thing in this podcast. It doesn't matter whether you're a leopard hunter or not. It doesn't matter if you're chasing field mice out there with a mixed up mutt. This is a question that we all need to be able to answer on the spot when we are asked. I'm sure that most of us have never thought about it. I know that I really didn't really start thinking about this until I started producing this podcast. And I hope over the last few months, all of you have taken time, heard me ask you that question enough times, and you did great. I'm sure a lot of you did. But that's why we talk to people like Gavin. He thinks beyond just the hunt. He thinks beyond the grip and grin, the tailgate shots, all that stuff. It's a big picture. This is a chess game, and you need to be able to play chess. Don't be caught playing checkers in a chess game. All right, folks, that Old South dog box is rocking back there, and we have got a hot leopard track, and Gavin has read the sign, and he said it's time to dump the box.
So it's interesting. Panther, in our logic, panther refers to the black panther.
Right.
So that's the melanistic version of a leopard or a jaguar. So
that's right.
So we really call it a panther. I know that for you guys, the mountain lion has about 724 different names, but
there's 723 officially.
Yes. And you have a panther as well, so throw that in. But yes.
Yeah. The whole mountain lion thing, the panther deal is of course, my buddy Clay Newcomb's got a lot of mileage out of the Black Panther thing over there on the Bear Grease podcast, but yeah, it's amazing how many people. I think people just want to see them, and we're talking about the mountain lion, the cougar, the puma, that is black, and it's just
doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. No.
And actually, it's in Australia. They have the same myth, so they have a whole following around the Black Panther here, and there's Facebook sites and there's social groups. And when you go onto those, and I've met one of the guys that is sort of the leader of one of these groups, a very down to earth, very normal person. You would never gather he would be a Looney Tune, but he runs this the site, or he did run the site. They put a lot of money into going out into the bush and putting up trail cameras and trying to capture this and that, and they've done documentaries. They pump money into it. But when you go into their sites, there's thousands of people that are attesting to seeing these animals.
My parents swear up and down they live in a remote area of southern Indiana, and we have had heated arguments about the existence of cougars in southern Indiana, and I'm just like, they don't exist. It'd be so rare, but people want to see it. I'll tell you a quick story. It's funny. When I was working as a conservation officer, I would field a lot of these calls from people who would see the black panther or the cougar out there on the landscape, and I had one guy that called in, and I had to return the phone call, and I was like, so you've seen a mountain lion? Yeah, I've seen a mountain lion. I used to live in Colorado, and I used to see them all the time. And I was like, I know people that are professional outfitters in Colorado that have only, for the last 30 years, they've only seen 3 in their lifetime. So if you see them all the time, and now you're seeing one here, and he told me where it was, I said, I knew exactly where he was talking about. I said, that is a yellow lab up in their yard. He's sitting right behind this house, this big yellow cat right behind their house. I said, that's a yellow Labrador retriever. And he's like, are you trying to tell me I don't know what a mountain lion looks like? I said, no, I'm trying to tell you don't know what a Labrador looks like.
The interesting thing is that they haven't really picked up on the science around the possibility of melanistic animals. So if you have a look in, let's say, Western India, where the highest recorded population of melanistic leopard are, you'll find that it's like 1% of the population or less. And the regularity with what they see them is so scarce. And now this is in a native endemic population where that gene exists, and the occurrence of these animals is very, very, very rare. Now, in order for them to reproduce, the only way you can guarantee that you're going to get a melanistic offspring is if you have 2 melanistic individuals, right? Now, if you have one of either side, well, your chances are incredibly low. So, if you have a normal rosetted cat and a melanistic cat, the chances are there, but they're still really low. I can't give you the actual numbers, but they're low. So in order for there...
Buy lottery tickets.
That's it. So in order for there to be regular sightings of melanistic panthers in the United States, in Australia, you would have to have a base population of only melanistic animals. Now, even melanistic animals can produce rosetted standard offspring. So why does nobody ever see those?
Exactly.
Why are you only seeing the black ones? So it's just not like biologically possible, to my understanding at least. And I'm not a scientist, but to my understanding, it is just not biologically possible for there to be a population of black animals, because that's not the only animal that was released from a zoo, escaped captivity, thrown out into the world by someone who didn't want the pet anymore. All these big cats in all their various coat patterns have been brought into the States, Australia, or Europe, Russia, wherever. So it's not only the black ones that escaped, guys.
That's right. And I am not cutting that out of this podcast, that part of this conversation. I'm not cutting it out. The voice that you hear on the other end is my good buddy, Gavin Lipjes. And Gavin, you've been very busy with, making appearances on, I've seen a couple different places you've made appearances on podcasts and different things like that. I'm glad to have you back on the Houndsman XP podcast.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to be back, and thank you for this podcast. I listen to it religiously.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean...
we do the best we can with what we got.
Yes, yeah. I was going to say something along those lines. You can't... it's not your fault.
Well, hey, I wanted to catch up with you, see what's going on. I know that you kind of been... it's almost like you've been marooned on an island over there in Australia since the pandemic started.
Yeah, actually, even just before that pandemic. But yes, it's been several years since I've been home. I think I'm slowly getting depression, but oh well.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about. I wanted to take a deeper dive, and it was kind of your idea. I'm going to give you the credit for it, but and pretty much turn the mic over to you. But let's talk about jaguar hunting some more. Or I'm sorry, I've been talking to some people from Central America about jaguar lately.
Lucky
Let's
you,
talk about
man. Geez,
leopard.
let's talk about jaguar hunting.
We need to get my buddy Josh Whitaker on here. I mean, he's probably the person that I know that has the most ties to that and experience with that. But let's talk about leopards in South Africa.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so we said we're going to speak a bit about sort of what it's like to be a leopard hunter. I mean, what
Absolutely.
is that? What is all that about? What is all that lifestyle? What does that all entail? And I think there's a lot of cross-referencing for your recreational hunters and your professional hunters in the States. You know, your outfitters in the States. A lot of what we're doing daily, weekly, monthly would relate quite or overlap quite parallel to what the guys are doing there and in other places around the world as well. But I guess if we talk about a leopard hunter, and we are going to focus on the hound hunter, but just to give a quick idea that it's not only hound hunters hunting leopard. I know that a lot of those that are listening to this podcast, this information is not new, and many would understand exactly what that is. But there may be some guys that just have no real concept of what it's like to hunt in Africa. So I'll try and make it, you know, across the board for everybody to pick up on a bit of info. So there's three kind of approaches to leopard hunting. The baited hunt, and that's where no dogs are used. And leopard is a scavenger, so they use that as one of their feeding methods. And sorry, there I had a bit of a break interruption. So leopard is a scavenging animal, and they use that to their great advantage. It's one of the few solitary cats that do scavenge, and they'll take kills that don't belong to them. They'll go in and they'll own a kill that another cat has made, or even steal it from wild dogs. Occasionally from hyena, you see them feeding on one side of a carcass while a predator is feeding on the other side of the carcass. So they're real opportunistic feeders. And as a hunter, you can capitalize on that. You can artificially lay out meat, and you can do a draw leopard in to feed on that. Now, you can't, in this sense, specifically target an individual. That's the big Achilles heel to bait hunting, is that what comes in is what's coming in. Now, you don't necessarily need to pull the trigger on that animal, but that's sort of how it is. In really dense population areas, you might lay out, just as a number for argument's sake, 10 baits, and have 12 or 13 leopard feeding. Not all of those are going to be the cat you want to take. It is very difficult to identify individuals. You'd have to look at specific rosettes or specific chain of rosettes or specific dots just above the whiskers. There's a few methods to ID individuals, but it's not simple. You need to have
just to refresh our audience. Rosettes are what us Yanks call spots, right?
That's right, yeah. So we don't call them spots because a cheetah has spots. So the cheetah, the diurnal fast-paced hunting cat, that has just round spots, and then the leopard has rosettes. And the difference between the leopard rosette and the jaguar rosette is that the leopard rosette is sort of hollow in the inside, and the jaguar rosette often has patches within that rosette, so it's filled in within the rosette, apart from other physical differences.
when you're bait hunting leopards, uh, do you have an idea of the cats that are operating in the area? Camera traps, tracks,
Yes,
that side of it.
yes, absolutely. All those things. Now, for those that are going into an area where they've never hunted before, the catch up on that information can take a long time. And in many cases, they just don't have that period of time because a professional hunt might only take 14 days, you know. So in
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks, you would never be able to know what's happening in terms of leopard in an area. You might get lucky and find a specific, bump into the specific big cat that you're after, but you know how luck goes in hunting.
Right.
So generally, it's the guys that are repetitively hunting the same area, and the most successful operators are those that are outfitting in the best leopard population areas. So uh, there is the skill discrepancy between someone who's very experienced and someone who's novice, and like in life, that always exists. But there's no real, in my opinion, there's no real like a bait super hunter. There's no like super skill to bait hunting. If you find it really doesn't have to do with what the meat is or how specifically you present it and all that. These are little fine points that you do wax your game with, that you do have a smooth game with. But generally speaking, if you were to find the right spot, so meaning an area where leopard will be moving regularly, and a territorial male, they have scent marking posts. They have trees where they'll scratch their claws into to activate their pedal glands. So that's another scent
Mm-hmm.
marking method. And if you are to find by
Let's.
discovery or
I got to.
luck, sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I've got to visit that specific topic,
Sure.
Gavin. So do leopards make scratches similar to our mountain lion, where they gather up debris, things like that, and make that, or are they making most of their scratches on trees? Tell us what a leopard
I've
scratch looks like.
I've never seen that collection mound like what a mountain lion. I've never seen that either. What that mound looks like, but I understand. Through knowing what mountain lion is sort of about. No, leopard don't make that pile and then urinate on it or cover their feces under it or whatever that might be. So, but what they will do is they will urinate and they'll rub their hind legs through that. A female, so she'll urinate and then she'll kick it back with her hind feet, and that spreads it, and that puts the scent on her paws. So she just transfers it in a further area. Uh, and then a male, you'll find that he'll go up generally to a low hanging branch, a low hanging tree, and he'll rub sort of his orbital glands over that. Not that that deposit is great, but it's just I think a behavioral thing. And he'll rub his orbital glands and the whole length of his back down that. Then he'll arc his tail up and he'll urinate backwards onto that bush. And then he may kick back with his feet at that stage as well. Um, and that whole area is, if you're in it, you don't even have to be there that fresh. But if you're there within sort of 12 hours, it's a very, very strong musky smell. It's a very intense smell. And an
You can smell it. You can smell it with your nose.
easily,
Yeah.
yeah. And a strong or a large territorial male stinks like that almost all the time. So I've been behind the hounds on many occasions. Now, of course, we know the tempo of how the hounds change, and we know that they now jump the cat and they're running the cat. But I've been in situations where we've sort of been tracking. We come up to a sleeping point. So it's been like a cold trail up to a sleeping point in rocks or in dense vegetation, And then from there, we've jumped the cat. Now, obviously, the hounds, indicate that we've done that. But the scent of the leopard, I can smell it.
And you smell it before they jump the cat.
Pretty much where we get to the point where they've jumped the cat, I can smell the leopard. And that's happened many times. So they're very strong smelling. And that's, that plays into a lot of other little conversations about withholding scent, etc., etc.
Right.
But yes, so that's the way that they scent mark.
It's amazing.
So the orbital glands, the pedal glands, the glands in the paws, when they scratch their claws, it was always said they're sharpening their claws, and there may be that to it, but really it's just another scent deposit method. So they'll activate those glands in their paws, and they'll scratch that onto the trees.
This is going to sound very basic and elementary and even crude comparison, but somehow and I was never a house cat guy ever. Yeah, but having daughters, then that was imposed upon me of having some cats around.
Best learning tool if you want to be a cat hunter, though.
And as I watch these, we've got one cat that's in the house most of the time, and I'm constantly seeing her rub those orbital glands on the edges of tables and different things. And then we've got a male cat that comes in and out. He's I call him CB, which stands for crazy bastard. He is a nutcase, but he'll be in there sharpening, he'll be on those posts. And we've got some rough cut timber in our house, and he'll back up there. And just like you said, everybody says, oh, he's sharpening his claws. But what you're saying is he is
depositing scent,
activating those pedal glands. Is that what he's doing?
Yep. So it's another scent. It's another territorial action.
Isn't that crazy how that transfers from a leopard in South Africa to a house cat in Bear Branch, Indiana?
Well, all the solitary cats have a very similar, I suppose I can use the word ecology, a very similar set of habits. They're so similar. So the feral cats here in Australia present a very similar habit as what caracal do in South Africa, and I'm sure lynx would in Canada. And there's environmental differences that impact on their behaviors. There's environmental differences that impact on their size and shape and form. And then there's also that other factor of the morphing of their size and shape and form to match their prey species. So there's all these different things. But yes, the base set is live solitary, meet occasionally, meet either to have a fight or to have a reproduction action, and pretty much otherwise separate. So the game plan is so similar for all of them.
It's amazing. It just, the way you link those things together. And I guess as I'm moving through life here, I always look for those parallels, or those things, maybe not even parallels, but things that intersect in our world. And I've given my buddy Cleve Dwyer, that you've probably heard on the podcast in the past, about, do they make scratches with their front feet or back feet? But I've watched cats do it with their back feet. I know, I've seen video of lions, both African and mountain lions, making scratches with their back feet and things like that. But, I always look for those connecting events, to help me understand what's going on out there.
Yeah. The cat is such a successful predator that that playbook works on almost every continent, to my knowledge, and from small to big, they just morph their size to what prey species is available. Yeah,
I've always said that. I've always said, why do we as houndsmen have such a hard time breeding the instincts we need into our hounds to be successful when any barn cat, alley cat, whatever, they just naturally pick it up.
Yeah.
Where are we missing the mark here?
Yeah. I couldn't answer that question. Hey, it's a really good question.
Yeah. And there's no concentrated breeding there for most cats. They just know. They just develop those instinctive skills.
That's it.
And I often wonder if we don't get in the way.
Well,
a lot of times.
Well, I've often referred to one of the guys that introduced me to this, about a late tennis sporter, and his concept, and I think he based a lot of this on learnings out of self-discovery and perhaps also out of France as well. But that really was, I mean, I remember him saying, I can hear the words in my ears now, saying, just forget about all that stuff about drags and cages, and just forget about all that. You just take them to the bush and hunt them. If they don't hunt, they don't go again.
Right.
They have to have it. However, I have just really of recent come to a different or slightly different opinion about how important nurture is. And I think that's because I'm now in a position where I'm a father and raising 3 children and seeing, like almost on a daily basis, the more I put into them, the more they grow, the more that they develop. If I was just to step aside and come into the picture, for 3 minutes every day and rub them on their head and then that's it, I don't believe that they would, I don't know, but I'm thinking the same thing with the hounds. When you have 30, 40 hounds, you cannot put that individual attention into each one of them. When you have 2 or 3, suddenly you can. When you have 1, that's amazing. And so I think nurture definitely has a major impact in this. We cannot discount it. But yeah, there's that natural fact. If I don't know, I don't have the answer.
I agree. And we always go to the, if the animal rights person goes to the extreme for anthropomorphism, we probably go to the other extreme to discount it. But you can't help but draw those parallels of things in again, it goes back to that connecting the dots in our world, and we relay our relationships with our dogs with, I think there's some valid points there to be made, that the what you just said about children and interacting with our dogs and socializing and things like that. They're not just something that has to live out there, and when we need them, we can call upon it and expect greatness out of them. It's what we put into
dogs.
it.
They definitely are those dogs, and they're just pure instinct, pure hunting machines. And then there are others that are maybe just doing it to please you.
Exactly. Well, let's get back to some leopard hunting in South Africa.
Yeah, so baited hunting is the most common form of hunting leopard, and that's mainly because almost anybody can do it. So you can get the basics of sort of what you need to do. You very quickly learn some do's and don'ts around a campfire. You'll self-discover what you should or you shouldn't do, and you will have a varied amount of success just like that. And and we can even lay statistics and fact to that statement, in that there's been studies done, and this has been done by the animal rightists, where they're trying to discount, professional hunter proficiency. And there was a study done where, and this was based around leopard, where I forget the quantity of people that were in what's the right word, that did the survey, and they went through professional hunters, professional field guides, and field scientists, field biologists, and they laid out a whole spreadsheet of images of different aged leopard, different sex leopard, and you had to say, in just a multiple choice questionnaire, what age you think it was, what sex you think it was, and it went through all of that. All right. And out of those three different groups, so the field biologists, the field guides, which is the photographic safari guides, and the professional hunters did worse, and they only got something like an average of 30% correct on that answer sheet, and the field biologists did the best.
Sure.
So there is a little bit of science behind what I'm saying. Some of my countrymen are trying to throw stones at me from a long distance right now, but there is some base to the statement. So you don't have to be incredibly proficient at baiting to be able to pull a leopard to a bait. And then to set up a blind at 100 yards, you sort of need to know which way the wind's going to be blowing.
Exactly.
And you can even manufacture it that your rifle is set up tied to a pole, and there's even devices that have been punted by guys like Craig Boddington and that, where it's this really smooth mounted system that's on a tripod, and you've got flow with your rifle as you need to, but you can lock it in place as well, because you know the leopard is going to be standing at a particular point, because that's where the bait is. So you can fabricate this really well, provided that you get the right leopard on bait. And having an understanding, a true deep understanding of leopard ecology is not necessarily a prerequisite. The majority of professional hunters in South Africa, like the average, I'm saying, in Southern Africa, might do, and we'll talk on average, 1 or 2 leopard hunts a year, maybe. And I would probably lean more towards 1. And it might be less than that. Now, there will be outfitters that have their operation based in really high dense leopard areas, and one of their main ticket items, one of their main selling items off their shelf is leopard, and they're going to be doing 7 or 8 leopard a year. There's nobody that is like a single professional outfitter that is doing 20 leopard a year from a particular area. The only people that do that are the professional houndsmen.
So let me draw this parallel, and you tell me if this is accurate or not. And this is not to draw disparagement on. I support people hunting.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not going to.
I agree with you there.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue about which way's harder.
No.
This isn't an ego contest.
Not at all.
This is to showcase how in depth hound hunting actually is, because I think we get the short end of the stick a lot of times, even among the broad hunting community. I will see other hunters talk about fair chase and things like that when using hounds. So this conversation is partially to dispel some of those rumors and educate people who may have those feelings. But let me draw this parallel, and you tell me if you think I'm accurate. If I am proficient at hunting black bear, the American black bear, over bait, stand placement, bait placement, location, all of those things that take all those elements that make for an effective hunt in that instance, could that person be effective and have good transferable skills to hunt leopard in Africa as a bait site hunter?
Yes. I think that we can start to draw a lot of parallels between the black bear hunting and the leopard hunting, from baits right through to hounds. There's a lot of parallels there. Yes. If you were to take an active black bear hunter and drop him in Africa and give him a couple of seasons to find his feet, he would certainly be as successful as a starting out professional hunter that's had a couple of seasons as well. There are some other factors that do inhibit foreigners from being that successful in Africa, because there's a lot of cultural understanding that you need to be able to work in that environment. But in terms of actual hunting, No, I think a hunter is a hunter, and you were to take that person and drop them in that environment, given that they have already this whole playbook and understanding of the tools, accessories, and personal requirements. Yes, a couple of seasons and they'd be as successful as any other relative, African hunter.
Sure. All right, so we've drawn that parallel and we've talked about bait hunting. You said there were 3. What is, did I miss?
So the next thing is you get guys that combine bait and hounds. Now, I say this because almost all hound hunters in Southern Africa will make use of bait at some point. And I'll get back to that when I speak about just hounds only. But bait and hounds, one of the most successful professional leopard hunters, a hound hunter, will religiously and almost only put his dogs down if a cat is fed on a bait. If they come across a track, they'll track it and they'll place a bait. He will not put his dogs down on a track. He will want only the leopard to be fed. Now, I say this, please, no, I don't live with this, this particular guy, and there's others like that. I'm just using this as a mental reference. I've never lived in the man's, 4x4. Sure. I haven't hunted with him always, and I just know through conversation that that's pretty much the gameplay. And it's a smart play if you are doing this for money, if this is your profession, because his success rate is really high. So if we count how many times the tailgate is dropped to how many times the cat is in the tree, his numbers are up there. And when you're standing on the showroom floor at Safari Club International, and there's guys coming across, and probably the second question that's asked all the time is, what's your success rate? Because it's known that leopard hunting is very challenging, and many guys go home skunked, and it's an expensive deal. So a leopard safari doesn't cost you a leopard safari, generally speaking. You probably need a factor 2 or 3 in some cases. I know some real reputable authors and hunters been back, 4 or 5 times before they even get a leopard, and they're going with good outfits. So luck always does have a play in this as well. And remember, you're not just shooting any leopard. There was a time when you were just shooting any leopard, and any leopard was a trophy leopard, and that made it easier, because a big female on the bait, you drop 10 baits, you're going to get 13 leopard. Well, 9 of those are going to be females, and others are going to be sub-adult males. So it has changed. Now you are targeting just, really mature males. So
they run in those bait sites in conjunction with trail cameras or camera traps?
Yes, typically that's
okay.
Now, it's not a necessity, but it's definitely a really advantageous tool to put out that camera trap, because the most important factor around that is it's giving you a timestamp. It's giving you the knowledge of, you can start patterning him. In tracks, you can determine that this is a good shootable male. So let's say pre any camera traps, pre that technology, you could still determine that, no, we don't want to hunt this leopard, or we do want to hunt this leopard. Let's put the dogs down, or let's leave them in the pickup.
Right.
But with a camera trap, you can start patterning, he likes to leave the bait at this time, And it's not always exactly that, It's not like dinner time at home is, or supper time, whatever you call it, is 7 o'clock on the dot. And if you're not there, you get a smack with a wooden spoon from mom. But so it's nature, there's variance in this. It's not too exact time, but you get a good play.
But it is amazing how wildlife has that internal biological clock.
Yes.
That they use. So, man, I'm hearing so many parallels to like you said, the bear hunter and the leopard hunter in South Africa. We did the same thing in Wisconsin. Got baits. We're checking cameras. We're making assessments. Okay, this track was made by a small bear 9 hours ago. Let's run and check some other baits and see if we've got a bigger bear since then, and we're making decisions based on the information we're gathering off of when the bear was there and off of trail cameras.
Exactly right. Yeah. So it
Yep.
it really refines your decision making, and it increases your chances of success, because you're putting your dogs down on a fairly hot track in hound hunting terms. Yeah. We know the ability of these dogs. Even a fairly hot-nosed dog should have no trouble with, a 5-6 hour track in good conditions. So, especially a large animal like a leopard or like a bear. So we're not really challenging their abilities that greatly. They should be able to take the track, and obviously there's these factors, the standard scent impacting factors, but let's just call it an average. It's not the hardest thing for the hounds. The reason why bait and hound combination works so well is that a lot of those operators that are running those leopard hunts may be doing 20, if they have 2 operational packs, they might be doing 30 leopard hunts a year. But for the rest of the year, those dogs are hunting caracal and jackal predominantly. So they dual, purpose hounds. So when you have a bait, you're often going to pull in jackal anyway. So the way that they release the hounds on the bait is also really important, because they need to get a determination of where that leopard is going. They'll do that visually. They might even assist that with some camera traps and know, all right, he's sort of leaving this way. And that's also it's not like he leaves the same route every time, but on that, you can start to refine that too. And you'll just take a lead hound and let go of that lead hound, a trusted lead hound that knows this play. That hound knows that he's now been traveling in the vehicle for X amount of time. He's in this different environment. It's not home. It's not with the jackal crew. It's not that same repetitive day. He knows now we are in a leopard hunting situation. Oh, here's the leopard scent. I know this is primary. But younger dogs don't necessarily know all that, and they can be, they're as easily rewarded for a jackal as they are for, maybe more rewarded because of the 250 days they're hunting in the year. Maybe 150 of those, they're getting a pat on their head for catching the jackal. So it takes a little bit of intelligence and maturity and experience for the dog to understand that he can cross over. That's
exactly right. And I've firsthand experience on that. When I'm at home here in Indiana, when I take hounds out, they know that it is for a different game. It's the way I handle them. It's the fact that we're in camp and they're on tie-outs. There's a lot of different factors, and a lot of times we overlook the ability of these hounds and the intelligence of these hounds to pick up on those environmental differences of when we're doing certain things. When I go to bear camp, then, and I'm bear hunting in the mountains, the things I'm doing with hounds are a lot different. For instance, when I'm at home, dogs are in their kennels or on their tie-outs, whatever, and they spend the night there. It's home. They know where they're at. They know what to expect. When I go and I travel and they're living out of the dog box, they're being fed. It's as soon as we come back in from hunting. I mean, there's just all kinds of different little nuances within the individual things that I do.
Walk outside to your truck and open the door and get in, and then walk outside your truck holding your rifle.
Yes.
And see the difference.
They can pick up on pick up on the different kind of clothes that I'm wearing.
Yeah. Put a rifle in your hand and suddenly there's a massive excitement in the kennel. Do the same process without a rifle and they don't pay attention to you. Yeah. So yes, they definitely pick up on it.
We dismiss that, or we overlook the ability of those hounds to figure that out. I mean, it's amazing to me.
Yeah. So that those dogs, they're a little bit more experienced, a little bit more mature hounds. They know what the deal is. You come up to a bait tree, you set out that lead hound. He might smell some jackal, but he can smell the leopard because the scent is all around there. He's just got to find the right exit, a line exit path, and boom, the lead hound takes it. And when he's confirmed that, then they will release some more dogs to support him, and then they will follow on foot with the base of the pack, or the remainder of the pack, which might be the majority of it. They'll follow with them on leash until they're really certain that those dogs the lead dogs are moving that track nicely. Then only will they release the rest of the pack.
I have a question. I got to interject, and I
Sure.
hate to interrupt
No,
your
go
flow,
ahead.
Gavin. So have you noticed within the hounds that you use for leopard and for Caracat or jackal or whatever, your bush pig, whatever, do you find you've got certain hounds that, yeah, running caracal is fun, but holy cow, this is a leopard.
Absolutely.
And we get to run a leopard.
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes, and the other way around as well. You'll get hounds that will take the track of the leopard until it's jumped, and then suddenly they're at your feet again. But they don't do that when it's caracal or even a small leopard, put it that way.
Right.
Yeah. So yes, you get it both ways.
Yeah. I just wanted to see if that was cross culture there.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So yes, I've had many hounds that are fairly uninterested, when you're doing other things, and then suddenly you put them on a nice big leopard, and that's all they want in the world. They don't want any.
Yeah.
They're heroin addicts. That's all they want.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Bait and hound hunting, that is, in terms of statistic success, in terms of return for your effort, that is the most sure bet. However, it does detract a lot from hound hunting, in my opinion, because you start to take away or minimize some of that tracking skill set. You start to pigeonhole your dogs a little bit. You're always putting them on a nice track. So yes,
you're cherry picking tracks that they can be successful on. So where's the challenge? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So personally, and there are other hound hunters like myself that rarely use baits, and you use baits where there's no real network, and we can only, and I'll come back to this in a moment, but we can only hunt leopard pretty much professionally. So if you want to hunt leopard, you need to go get your professional hunter's license, and you need to start offering your services out. So that's the only pathway truly to regular leopard hunting. So where was I? So if you just putting your dogs down on those hot tracks every time, you're not really developing this massive skill set and drawing out the potential that you have in your dogs or yourself, I would say, because tracking is the most attractive part of this game, at least to me, and there's others like me as well, that following these tracks is the hunt. Pulling the trigger is good.
Yeah.
But it's almost an anticlimax in many occasions. Now, I know that for the traveling hunter, pulling the trigger is what they came to do. Yeah.
But for us,
exactly.
Yes.
So we secretly sit around the campfire nodding our head. Yes, let's hope we get your leopard tomorrow. But I'm saying, let's hope we don't, but let's hope we have a good track to run because I want this to go on another day. And they want it to end, and they want to move on to their next animal. So
I know a lot of outfitters and guides and things like that, and the clients that show up and we used to do some outfitting stuff here, but the client that just shows up, that's just there for the experience, to have a good time, to experience it all, every part of it, every, the successes and the failures and all of that stuff. If I find a track I want to turn loose on it because I've got a young dog back here in the box, this would be the perfect track for them to be on right now.
Exactly.
But it's a sub-adult, so I can't, because I've got the client sitting over here who's paying me for a trophy.
Exactly.
Or,
Yes.
And so I get where you're coming from.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a real difficult line to walk, and it's the only line to walk legally in Southern Africa. All right, so that probably leads us into the hounds only style, and
that's what we're talking about.
And that's driving roads, walking river lines, walking game trails from drinking holes, free casting through mountains based on evidence, based on indicators that this is worth it, not just taking a walk. You can do that just to give them, a bit of time out of the box or something, but predominantly you're doing it with knowledge base. So you're going to walk a river line because you know that this is part of a leopard's territory. You're going to walk, you're going to drive roads that are going to be prime in that area, that are prime leopard habitat. And I think I've said this previously on a podcast with you, but leopard use 30% of their habitat, sort of 70% of their time, 30% of their territory, about 70% of the time. So a large portion of their territory that they will scent mark and actively protect, they rarely go to. They only go to those extremes when they want to scent mark an area. And they're continuously trying to push those boundaries as well. They want to expand their territory, which is an interesting thing. They don't get to a point where they, oh, well, that's okay for me. I'm happy with the state of my life right now. And, I don't need another boat. I don't need another car. It's not that. It's they continuously, because that creates more hunting opportunity, more success, more chance of them pulling in another female. There's all these
more breeding opportunity.
Yeah. And I'll quickly make a point here on a fact that relates directly to conservation, and a point of necessity for predator hunting is that removing those old males is really fundamental for population dynamic, genetic dynamic, and population growth. Because a very dominant 7, 8, 9-year-old leopard may be infertile, or he may be very reproductively poor, but he will continuously grab more and more land because he can. And when you remove him, you often find 2 males enter that territory. And they'll be younger, they'll be more vibrant. That's what you need. So removing that really old male is a conservation win on more than one front than just keeping that old leopard that's got a name, and his name is Cecil, we'll call it. But
exactly.
Let's look after Cecil because he's such a pretty animal to take a picture of. And he's been in that area, and he's the daddy of this one, and he's the granddaddy of that one, and that's all a lot of nonsense. The truth is, nature needs that turnover, not too rapid, but it needs that turnover at the right intervals, and lions facilitate that. Stronger, younger leopard facilitate that. But these are in like perfect scenarios. These are in perfect habitats. You can get areas where there are no lions, and leopard thrive. And that one dominant leopard is not really going to be getting a lot of challenge. So we need to interject in some of these areas. So it's a conservation win.
That is such a great point, Gavin. I'm so glad you brought that up, and it's probably laid out as well as anybody I've ever heard talk on it. I think we as a human population, we get misguided on that topic, and is just beautifully put there, for genetic diversity, for the overall health of your species. it is good to take those mature males out of that so that you ensure that you have a healthy population. That was awesome.
Yep. Yeah. And a lot of antis, and this is a rhetoric that you'll hear, especially when you get into the. I'm not talking like the Facebook antis that are just emotion based. I'm talking about those that are like a little bit more advanced in their game, where they're trying to pull science backing arguments against hunting. And a lot of them will say that removing those older males are detrimental to the population, but there's no real science base to that, provided is of a particular age, because there's something called infanticide, and that occurs greater with social cats, at least in the current data set that I'm aware of. So African lions have a much higher infanticide numbers, let's say, than what leopard would. Okay, there's this difficulty that it's more challenging to study solitary cats than it is to study social cats, because social cats, there's 10 or 12 of them lying under a tree. You just drive up there and look. Exactly. Solitary cats are very secretive and difficult, but we have technology that helps a lot nowadays.
The mountain lion would qualify as a solitary cat like that as well.
Yes.
And I was just talking to Casey Stutzman, who I was talking to him this past week, and he's been involved in the mountain lion studies out there with Montana for a number of years. And to draw that parallel, he's found that in a very concentrated area, they have 6 or 7 lions that are living in the same, mountain valley area, that are preying on the same herd of deer. So all the things that we always hear, like, males will kill females and they'll kill subadults and all this stuff. Well, during times of high impact, when prey and food, they can actually interact, but once that goes away, they spread back out.
Yeah,
they're not lying around in big prides like you're talking about African lions, but they do learn to live together for survival purposes.
Yeah, it's beneficial to them. So a lot of those more advanced antis, they draw on a lot of science that will base their arguments, but a lot of that science is gathered from like pristine areas, is gathered from ecologically, fairly level, fairly pristine areas. So they're taken out of national parks and they're taken out of private reserves, where the ratios are all pretty much what they should be. They're not really taken from areas where there hasn't been lions for 100 years, 80 years, whatever. Yeah. They've been decimated in that area because cattle ranching came, but nobody could get rid of all the leopards. That's just almost impossible. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So the mountain lion would be very similar to that. You just, nobody is that good yet that you can just blanket get rid of them. We've been able to do it with wolves because they're fairly visible. They're more social. They're more, there's more they're more diurnal.
We can't do it
operation. Here. Yeah, you can. They did it in Western Europe. They just got rid of all the wolves. We could do it with lions, African lions, and that's been done in many parts of Africa where there were lions, and now they just don't exist any longer because humans did not want to cohabit with them any longer. But leopard still occur on the outskirts of cities, man. You just they
walking through the Coca-Cola plant.
Exactly, yes.
Like that video you sent me.
Yes, yeah. And you see the same in India, and they just, and the tiger as well. It's social and it survives much better. So a lot of that these factors of taking that large male are based on these prime conditions. They don't factor in these other environments where different things occur. Yeah. So, all right. So maybe back to that.
We need to get back to the topic.
back, back.
You and I can get talking about all the sideline stuff, and we talk a lot when we're not on the podcast, so it's easy for us to get sidetracked. But take us back to being a houndsman and a leopard hunter.
Right. So when you start to very rarely make use of bait, and in some instances, as I mentioned, it's necessary, but when you rarely make use of bait, then you are reliant on finding tracks, finding good tracks, and finding them in a condition that the hounds can take them. So that's easy to say. It's not easy to achieve, or as easy
Right.
to achieve as fabricating the environment by bringing the leopard to a bait. You now have to reel that leopard in. And in order to do that, you need to know a lot more about the leopard. You need to know a lot more about your environment. You need to have the dogs that are able to do that. And this is probably the biggest factor around this. And you yourself need to have that specific type of gearing to run that course, to run that game. And I think that's the real challenge in it. Now, your success rate is far less.
But listening to you talk, I almost disagree with you.
Okay.
On that, as far as the most important thing is having the dogs. Yeah, they're very important, but you as the professional hunter, the leopard hunter, has to know what is the prime range for me to find this leopard. How old is this track by looking at it? You know, we've talked before with your skills that you have about looking at bugs that crawl through the dirt, 3 hours before daylight, and, all the different factors. You've got to look at, tracking conditions. You might find the prime track of the prime species, but due to other factors of all kinds of things, you already know that you're probably not going to be successful. So I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit as being a part of the hunt that you play such an integral part. Whereas, okay, so I'll put it like this. Never hunted leopard, but I think that if you put me in a spot where I could go out and hang up bait, I could figure out to stay downwind and zero a rifle and a lot of different things and have a good chance of being successful. But if you handed me your best dogs, your most seasoned, go-to dogs, and said, Chris, I want you to go out here in the bush and go find a leopard. You can't use bait. You can't use any of that stuff. That is a whole different level of expertise, Gavin.
It is. No, you're right. It is, and we've seen that in many cases. And I've been the inexperienced young, green between the ears kid that's been handed those pack of dogs and gone out and not come home with much. And I've done that, and then I've been the guy. I'm not saying I'm the most, I'm not the number one leopard hunter. I'm not saying that, but I have definitely reached the point where, yes, I can go out and I can come back with a leopard when others couldn't. And so, yes, there is a difference, and that is experience, and it is how passionate you are about this thing. It's about how much you live it and you breathe it. And it's just a wormhole, man. You just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper in that wormhole, and not much else exists, I don't talk about, well, I do now, but I've been stranded here, but I never used to talk about much else. My wife can attest to that.
Oh, me and you both. Houndsman XP is very proud of our partnership with the organization Freedom Hunters. Freedom Hunters is a nonprofit organization that takes America's veterans hunting from field to field, from the battlefield to a field near you, when you volunteer your time to take America's warriors hunting with you and your hounds. It's easy. Go to houndsmanxp.com, click on the partnership tab, and it will take you to Freedom Hunters. You can go direct to their website to make donations at freedomhunters.org. Support America's heroes. Let's pay it back. Visit Freedom Hunters at freedomhunters.org or go to houndsmanxp.com and you can find them on our website, From Field to Field.
Yeah.
My wife's like, oh, more hound stuff, more hound stuff,
Yes.
more hound stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I get it. I get the obsession. The obsession. But I mean, just think about how intricate that has to be. You have to know leopard ecology. You need to know breeding habits. You need to know home ranges. You need to know, and I've picked up some of this same expertise when I've talked to Cleve Dwyer when he's been on the podcast and talked about, you know, certain times of the year the deer congregate in this area because they're feeding on this plant species and they've got water in this area, and you know, just so many intricate parts where it's just in depth. It's just in depth, and nobody can dismiss it if we break it down to its individual parts, and then we add the element of a hound, which we are forced to. Not forced, that's probably a poor choice of words, but we rely on those hounds to develop those skills and nurture those skills and breed for those skills and all the different things. Why anybody would be able to dismiss the overall in-depth investment that houndsmen make to catch game is beyond me. Yes. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yes. And I don't know how this has, in our hunting world, become the sideline thing. I don't know how it has not been more recognized of what an art this is. You know, and I don't say this like we must all tap ourselves on the shoulder. I say this just because it is, you know, it is. There's so much you need to know and do and have experienced and gathered and remembered and play out. It's not a simple deal. Yeah.
No. And it used to drive me crazy when I would see other hunters say, well, I'd never have any desire to chase bear or lion, or in your case, leopard, with hounds because it's not fair chase. Holy smoke. Yeah. How much time have you got? Please come over to my, let's sit around the fire.
You're more polite than me. I'm looking for a bat at that stage.
I probably am too. I'm just being nice because we're on the podcast.
But you see, this is the next factor, and this has been laid on us as well, is that we always have to argue our case as well. Why are we always arguing our case?
Why
shouldn't we put that to bed? This has been going on since how many hundreds of years has this been going? We still need to be arguing this point. Yeah, exactly.
Thousands of years. Yes. The earliest documented recordings of hunting showed man with a dog, and since then we have advanced our civilization, we've advanced our weaponry, we've advanced our techniques, we've advanced our transportation, all these other things. But that caveman was hunting with a dog to begin with, So if it's not fair chase, was the caveman not participating in fair chase at that point?
I mean, what is it? Yeah, give me.
Who's got the unfair advantage?
Give me a piece of rod that I can sharpen the edge to make a spear long enough, and give me a few good dogs, and I'll come home with a leopard. Yeah, I might.
Long enough is the key word right there.
But everyone else, you need a rifle, man.
Yeah.
So take away that technology and wear you. But anyway, that's another.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. So
what are some of the biggest challenges you face as a houndsman and a leopard hunter, aside from convincing other people that it's okay?
Yes. All right. So access to leopard is probably the most challenging, and in order to be able to have to be running this thing well, to be doing it properly, you want to be hunting 150 to 200 days a year. Okay. To be sincere, if you really do this right, you can't get away with much less than that. You You can do it for your own pleasure and enjoyment, absolutely. And if you went out 30 days a year and had a great time doing it, wonderful. But if you wanted to master this, you'd be needing to do that kind of quantity of hours for many years in a row, or at least many years. And
And how do you have roadblocks in that, Gavin?
Yes.
As far as governmental roadblocks and
Yes.
regulations and things like that?
Yes. So the leopard is that iconic species, worldwide loved and cared about, and it's not so easy just to get access to go and hunt a leopard. Now, illegally, you can get a few gaps through where you might go and take care of a leopard on a farmer's property, and he just is not really worried about the rules and regulations. This is doing damage to his business, his livelihood, and he wants it gone. He doesn't know how to do it. He heard that you know how to do it. Will you come and do this, and I'll cover the diesel in your truck? So that occurs. But if you want to do this professionally, properly, and stay out of jail, then you follow a permitted system. So every leopard that is hunted, even if you not take it, in the process of hunting it, you need to have a permit in your pocket. And that permit comes in two forms. That comes in a CITES harvest export permit, or it comes in the form of a depredation permit, which is issued by whatever regional authority you're working under. So that's the biggest roadblock. Now, in order to be able to get access to those permits, you can't buy them, unless you won the lotto and you decided you just want to hunt leopard for the next 15 years. Then you could buy them, but they go at a fair price because it's a valuable commodity in the trophy hunting world. And even farmers that have this leopard that's taking out their prize game or their cattle or their sheep or whatever it is, they'll think twice about calling that guy just to come do it for a truck, a tank full of diesel, if he can sell that to an outfitter, which will have a paying client, which will give him 5, 8, 7, 10,000 US, whatever it goes. So there's a great value on leopard there. So getting the permits is primary, but they're also limited in the quantity that each country gets, and that's limited by CITES, that's International Convention and Trade of Endangered Species, and they will issue quota for each different country. So, for instance, South Africa's, I think it was 150, it could be less now. Zimbabwe's was 500, I think it's 350 now, it might be back up to 500. So I really haven't checked up on that very recently, but it's an easy data to find. But so that's limiting what permits can be issued. Now, for conservation purposes, that's not just a blanket thing. So you get 150 leopard around the country, now you can go anywhere you want. And if you shoot a leopard, that comes off the quota. They are refined again to different areas. So some areas hold a lot of leopard, other areas hold less leopard. So you can't just be hunting and deteriorating a population in a specific area year after year after year. So some areas, have to have permits issued to them, which might be a little bit more marginal. Typically, we find that that's when the hound hunters get called in, when it's a bit more of a marginal area, because that excludes the bait hunting guys. They find that those marginal areas, the leopard have been persecuted for a period of time, and they may become aware of baits. And the baits are a learning point for leopard, where if a female comes onto a bait and she's maybe poisoned slightly and survives it, she'll teach all of her cubs that this is a hazard situation, and then those cubs don't necessarily ever want to come to a bait again, a presented bait. Or it could be that a leopard comes into a bait, a good male, he comes into a bait and is shot at and missed, and now he's learned that that's a hazard scenario, and then a few of those cues around that mean that he'll never want to come into that bait again. And they learn very quickly. They have to learn very quickly to be able to survive. They have to experience something once, and then they will be aware of it. They don't have to have this repetition. So permits are the major roadblock to free leopard hunting, specifically for a houndsman. So you need to be able to partner with different outfits. And partnering with outfits means that they have to be pro-hound, and many of those outfits are not pro-hound around Southern Africa, and they're not pro-hound because they find it in some cases a challenge to their business model, because you could be more successful than their baited hunt. They're in the same position where they get a certain quota of permits, and let's say they're on a fairly large property in fairly good leopard hunting habitat. They might only be getting 3 or 4 leopard permits, one particular outfitter. Now, if he can sell those hunts twice over each of them, that's a good business model. And he almost has to do that to make it worth its while. If he was to sell each permit just one time and have 100% success rate, he'd be only getting 4 hunters in a year when he could be getting 8 hunters in a year. And those 4 hunters will then also only accumulate the other game they hunt, whereas 8 hunters will be doubling up on that. So instead of you selling 4 extra kudu or 4 extra buffalo or whatever it might be on your leopard hunt, if you have a 50% success rate, you're selling 8 buffalo and 8 kudu. So the business model for the bait hunting is much better than a business model for a hound hunt, which has statistically a higher success rate. So you have outfitter pushback in many cases. So you need to partner with guys, and typically those outfits are in marginal areas, or they found that by having a hound pack as part of their sales model, or their sales options, that they're drawing in other interests, they're drawing in further clients, then some have seen that as a benefit to their business model as well. So they can be in slightly marginal areas where they're not getting the best trophy quality, they're not getting the most success rate, and their leopard hunting, although leopards are there and they might be getting a fair quota, they're not ching-chinging on that because it's just not possible. But to bring in a hound pack does better for them. And
Wow.
And then referral, which is very important. That's about the primary advertisement or advertisement method in the hunting industry, is word of mouth. If you have good reference, then you will have a much greater success. So there's a few different angles that those outfitters go at approaching hound hunts. And I've stepped in camps where I've sat down the first night around the campsite and with the owner of the concession, and he sort of said straight out to me across the fire, I don't like hound hunting. I don't believe in it. And if I could vote against it, I would vote against it.
No kidding.
And we could ban this from our hunting world. But you're here because the client asked for it. And I've been
kidding.
Yes. So we are seen in many of these situations as a non-necessity, as a and I can understand that from their point of view, because they are business people. They are making a living in the hunting industry, and they have to make the best choices that are going to see their cash flow sustain or improve year on year. And they need to be forward thinkers, and they need to be responsive to what's happening in the general environment and globally. And they have to understand on what cards to play to see this through the long term. because a lot of these guys are in it and they've invested in it, and their presence in those areas is paramount because they're saving those areas. They are protecting those areas from mining, agriculture,
Right.
home development, whatever it might be, poaching. So
Timber.
Exactly. So they're really, really important people in the conservation playground. So hound hunting to them is sort of like, well, we don't really need this. I can still get a leopard without these dogs. And in many cases that's true, but not in all cases.
I've known outfitting businesses here in the U.S. that have operated in the same vein. They don't particularly keep a hound. They will offer hound hunts, but they will subcontract that work out.
Yes.
It's just an additional thing that they have to do to stay competitive or have that added income, at the end of the year.
Yep.
But I know most of the outfitters that I know, and some of the best houndsmen I know, are outfitters that keep hounds as well.
I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to wind up in Africa as well, is that you will get a few guys that'll be moving around here and there, and it's not a business model that you can sustain. So I suppose that falls into the next line of what's the obstacle. Well, the obstacle to be a continuous leopard hound hunter is a financial, and that is that you have to be able to run that business model, considering that you're away from home 200 days a year, and your real primary income source is from those hunts. And it's a fairly tight deal. So the money is better than what I understand to be for the mountain lion hunters or the bear hunters that are running those operations, who might be selling, and I don't know this with specifics, but they might be selling their whole package for $7,000, all included. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Update me on those prices.
That's pretty close.
But we would charge for our hound work that same money, and that's it. So I come into that area. I've been contracted to do the leopard portion of the hunt, and the guy might be there for a big game safari. He might be doing elephant and leopard. He might be doing buffalo leopard, or he might be doing leopard and plains game. But it's not just the leopard. And so I'll come in and I'll subcontract for that period of the leopard hunt, and it's normally 10 days, and I may charge anywhere between $4,000 and $7,000, dependent on how far we got to travel and where we got to go and what risks we have to go by. Sometimes we're going into areas where there's marginal or fringe line civil war.
Right.
And I've been in places where we have to overnight in a camp because we can't travel along the roads because there's military action. There's
wow.
Artillery fire on a public road because the government troops are attacking the rebel forces. So we've had to hold up in a camp and wait until that passes, and then travel that road the next day and see the shelled vehicles, on the side of the road because there was an attempt on a leader, or So,
wow.
So there are these different risk factors that we have to add value to it. So anyway, sort of between 4 and 7, and but it would just be the hound work. So we could be there, and in some areas you can be lucky. In some areas that I know really well, I know it's a 3-day deal for me. So that's good.
Yeah.
3 days I'm in and I'm out, and I go home with $7,000 in my pocket.
Those are the deals you like.
Yes. All right. So, but when you level that out,
that gives you that could also give you 7 more days to go out and look for those tracks to work your pack on.
Well, you need to have the permit. So yes, you can.
Oh,
you can. But very, very specifically. And look, there's not like real game wardens and game management officials out in these areas. A lot of these are self-managed. But the ethical code of most of the outfitters that I've worked with in this 20-year period is quite strong. And
Wow.
they self-manage them.
Good point.
That there's an integrity in this that, look, that is the wrong thing. We don't want to do the wrong thing because of our integrity. We respect this game. We respect this industry. We respect nature. That these are the parameters, and we're going to try and work within that as well as possible. And I don't say that like out of like a praise or something. That's just really how it is. There's a great integrity in the hunting environment. Of course, there's the guys that don't care, and a lot of those are fly-by-nights. They come in, they go. But the real steadfasts, they do it on a concrete foundation, and that gets passed down generation to generation, and it becomes the norm of operation. So yes, technically, if the leopard is down, you could go and spend another 7 days training, but it's not like a comfortable conversation to have, because you're effectively saying, may I go do something illegal on your property? Right. Hence the reason to try and get the leopard as late as possible, not as early as possible. But you're walking this double-edged sword now. So because if you can get this one done in 3 days, means you can leave camp and move on to the next one and get the next one done in 3 days. That's great. Now you're catching
there
time.
You go. That
and
now
when
you're
catching
you're
time,
thinking big picture.
Yes. So instead of squeezing 3 in a month, you're squeezing 4 in a month. Now you've just added another $5,000 to your monthly income. So these are the kind of things you're chasing to do. You have a limited time period to make as much money as you can, because the time outside of that, it's difficult to have another business or employment that allows you to be away from it for 200 days a year.
Sure.
And so that's the greatest restraint. And especially when you start to get a family, unless you have another base, like perhaps there's a base farming business, and you don't necessarily have to be there 200 days a year. Your wife, your brother-in-law, your partner, whatever it is, they're managing that while you're gone. Or, there's other guys where their wives are professionals. They might be, veterinarians or whatever it may be. So their base income is like the bread and the butter throughout the year. And what
I wish I'd have married a pharmacist.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's not too late, man. It's not too late. Eh?
It is for me, buddy.
The best way is just to walk in with a cough in each one and see who responds, Cough deep and hard and see what.
Yeah.
So the financial constraint is another difficulty. So to balance that, to be able to make a decent living and fulfill your obligations as a husband, a father, that if you're single, it's pretty easy. But as soon as you start taking on the other responsibilities, then that does get a little bit. So a lot of guys also, what they've done is that they've then just moved more into the outfitting business. So they'll start to offer a lot of the other hunts, and that'll be their base, or stable income, and then the hound hunts just add on to that. And that's about the best template to do this on. But it does also move your focus then, because then you're hunting everything, and occasionally you're hunting your hounds.
Yeah, for sure.
Because your downtime, when you just focus on leopard, your downtime, you might not be in that territory, but you may go into another, or you may return into a home base, and you'll be working your dogs.
Right.
Yeah. So there is a difference there. And I think that's the next factor that we can probably talk about here, and that is that's one of the massive benefits of being that traveling hound hunter, that guy that's subcontracting the dogs to the different outfits, is that you see such a varied landscape, habitat. You go to so many different countries, you're in so many different camps, you're hunting coastal rainforest, then you're hunting high elevation. Then you're hunting semi-arid areas. You see
Right.
so much, and your dogs see so much as well. So that then puts this other layer of experience onto this whole thing, and that's really, really superb. That's the wonderful thing. Is there's no greater feeling than going into an area, having success in a few days, shaking everybody's hand, loading up your dogs. Everyone was happy to have you
Right.
there, and they're happy to have you back. And then you move over into the next place, and you travel for maybe 2 days, and there's that whole adventure in that period. And then you arrive at the next camp, and then it's the next discovery, it's the next learning process, it's the next conversations of, let's start to absorb all this information of what do leopard do in this area. And then if you're successful in that area, man, and so it is hunting pure. It is just hunting pure.
See, my problem is I'm a romantic, Gavin. And when you start talking about that, I think about how adventurous and how, romantic that how you lay it out in such a romantic way. Idealistic, and it sounds like you've lived an amazing life, and it's like you should write a book, and I hope you do write a book someday.
Well, I've still got a lot to add to it. So.
There you go. That's what I've said too. People have said, you ought to write a book. And I was like, I'm not done yet. Yes, I can't write all the chapters yet.
Yeah.
But, when I think about that, I've been in some of those camps where guys show up that you don't know, and they've got a truck full of hounds. And it's like, there's a mystique around it. If you're there for, Gimsbach or whatever, and a houndsman pulls in, it's kind of a unique thing. It
is.
And so people have questions, and they want to know. And I asked another buddy of mine that's an outfitter. He outfits for multiple game, but he keeps hounds. And I asked him how it is when he has an elk hunter or a sheep hunter or a deer hunter, an antelope hunter, and they see the hounds. What's your reaction to that? And he said, man, people are intrigued. They want to know what's going on. It's, here comes Gavin and his truck full of hounds into camp. It's like, what's this dude doing here? What's his story?
There's few hunters that don't have an immediate connection to the dogs. There's few. I've come across few that don't want to come up and rub their ears and and talk to them, and then they're sort of interested in you, but you just another human. They say, hey, look at these, what are these dogs? Where these? Wait, and there's lots of questions.
Right.
Yeah. So yes, it is a unique thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you got anything else we need to? We could talk for hours, Gavin. We always do. Whenever we get talking, we talk for a long time, and but there's no doubt you're going to be back on the Houndsman XP podcast, and I want to save some of it for future episodes. But your story, and you're such a great person to have a conversation with, because you just, I don't know how you do it. I get distracted and go down rabbit paths, and you bring me back, which is supposed to be my job usually. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. It's always a pleasure to come on, and it's a good friendship, and thank you. I value it.
Yeah. Next time we just need to get together and tell some stories from the bush, probably, and tell some hair raising stories.
There's lots of those.
Yeah, I'm talking about challenges of being a leopard hunter, and you're talking about environment stuff, and you're out there hunting stuff that's going to eat you if it gets a chance, Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Well, Gavin, I appreciate your time, man. And let's get together and talk again soon. And until next time, you follow your hounds, I'll follow mine.
Thanks, Chris. You too.